This is the review for the Chapter 3 Algebra test. The first thing that you need to make sure that you do is on your calculator, turn on your stat diagnostics. If you don't turn on your stat diagnostics, when you go to do your R value or correlation coefficient, your R value will not show up. You do this by going to mode, and once you hit mode, you have what I have on the screen. Go all the way down, the fourth one from the bottom. You have to go over to stat diagnostics and turn it on by hitting enter on the on button. So in question number 1, it says the table shows the miles traveled by a boat on a river. The distance is the total number of miles driven. So we have this table here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to stat and then edit, which is number 1, hit enter. We're going to type those values into L1 and L2. Please pause the video and do that now. So now that we have our L1 and our L2 all typed in, always make sure that you double check your data, because one little screw up in the data will cause everything to go amok and you'll get the wrong answers. So the first thing that we want to do is determine the linear regression for the data around the slope and the y-intercept to the nearest whole number. So when we go to determine the linear regression equation, we're going to have f of x equals. Remember that f of x is the same thing as y equals. The preferred way, though, is the f of x equals. Then you're going to have an x. Now, to get the number that is in front of the x and the plus or minus after the x, we have to go to stat, tab over to calc, go down to number 4, which is the linear regression. We want the L1 and L2, that's correct. So they'll go down to calculate and hit enter. When you do that, this comes up on the screen. Notice that we have that y equals ax plus b. So our a value says 13.36. We want to round to the nearest whole number. So 15.3 is just going to round to be 15. That's the number that goes in front of our x in our linear regression equation. The plus b we get from the b part. We have 6.08. So that is a positive 6. So we're going to write plus 6 after our x. So our linear regression formula is, or equation is, f of x equals 15x plus 6. Don't forget to put the f of x equals, because it is an equation and equations require equal signs. Letter B says identify the correlation coefficient or R value of the line. Let's say that we're rounding to 3 decimal places in this one. So our R value, we ignore the R squared. We want to look at this bottom value. R equals 0.9869. If we were going to round to 3 place values, which is the nearest thousandth, we would get 0.987. If the question asked to round to the nearest hundredth, we would have 0.99. All right, but this says 0.987 if we round to the nearest thousandth. What does this tell us about the reliability of the data? It tells us that our data is strong. How do I know that our correlation is strong? It's in between 0.7 and 1.0. Anything that's in between there is considered strong. Predict the distance traveled after 10 hours. What you're going to do here is you're going to take this 10 and you're going to sub it into your equation in for x. So we're going to have 15 times 10, because that's the number of hours, plus 6. 15 times 10 is 150, plus 6 gives you 156. We can also figure this answer. Now, it does say show your work algebraically, so that's what we did. But you could double check your answer by going to y equals, typing in your linear regression equation. So 15x plus 6. And then do second and table. We would have to tab down to, we see it right there, 10 hours. 10 hours is 156, which is exactly what we got. So moving on to the next question. In our next question, we are finding the y-intercept for the following. Since we're finding the y-intercept for the following, I'm just going to make sure that my screen is still sharing. So we want to find the y-intercept of the following. When you go to find the y-intercept, we want to sub in a 0 for our x value. So when we go to figure that out, we're going to sub in a 0 right here. So we're going to have negative 3 times 0 plus 4y equals 42. Negative 3 times 0 is just 0, so that disappears. 4y equals 42. Divide by 4, divide by 4, we get y equals 10.5. Now that 10.5 is not our y-intercept. All right, when you go to write a y-intercept, you have to write it as a coordinate. So our y-intercept is always 0, whatever our y value is. So in this case, it happens to be 10.5. So we have 0, 10.5. That is our y-intercept. Be very careful. Don't just leave it as 10.5 because you'll only receive partial credit. In question number 3, we're looking for the x-intercept. When you're looking for the x-intercept, we want to sub in a 0 for y. So we're going to have 5x minus 8 times 0 equals negative 80. So 8 times 0 is 0. So I have 5x equals negative 80. Divide by 5, divide by 5. Negative 80 divided by 5, x equals negative 16. Again, just like with the y-intercept, negative 16 is not our answer. If you're asked to find the x-intercept, remember all points are written x comma y. So we subbed in a 0 for the y. So our y-intercept is really negative 16 comma 0. Remember, all points are always written x comma y. So our x value was negative 16. That's the number that goes first. Jack-o'-lantern is buying pumpkins. His pumpkin budget is $200. Large pumpkins are $10 each and small pumpkins are $4 each. Let L represent the large pumpkins. Let S represent the small pumpkins. Write an equation in standard form for the situation. So it says that large pumpkins are $10 each. So 10 times the large plus $4 each times the small. And the budget is $200. That's it in standard form. You have to use L and S because that's what it tells you to do. If Jack buys 8 large pumpkins, how many small pumpkins can he buy? Well, what we're going to do is take that 8 and sub it in for the large because it says he's buying 8 large. So instead of 10 times L, we're going to have 10 times 8 plus 4S equals 200. So 10 times 8 is 80, plus 4S equals 200, minus 80 is just a two-step equation now. So 4S equals 120, divide by 4, and we get S equals 30. So he could buy 30 small pumpkins. In letter C, it's asking you find the X and Y intercepts. Now, X is going to be, because L comes first, X is really L, and Y is really S. When we go to graph it down here, I'm going to count by 10s going across the bottom part. I'm going to count by 10s going up along the side as well. You have to make sure that you label your axes. So these are small, and these are large. So when we go to figure it out, remember, if we're going to figure out our x-intercept, we want to sub in a 0. We want to sub in a 0 for the y. If we're going to find our x, because x is what we're looking for. So again, we're going to use this equation. We're going to use that equation down here. So we're going to have, instead of, we have normally 10L plus 4S equals 200. I'm just going to rewrite it twice so I can easily sub it in. So that is our equation that we're going to use. So I'm going to look for my x-intercept. Notice how I divided it into 2 pieces. I'm looking for my x-intercept. So I'm going to sub in a 0 for my y. When I look for my y-intercept, I'm going to sub in a 0 for the x. So subbing in a 0 for the y, that's really my s. I'm going to have 10L plus 4 times 0 equals 200. 4 times 0 is just 0, so those cancel out. So all I have is 10L equals 200. divide by 10, divide by 10, and you get L equals 20. So my x-intercept is 20, comma 0. That is over to 20, up to 0. So that's that point right there. When I go to find my y-intercept, I want to sub in a 0 for my x. So 10 times 0 plus 4s equals 200. 10 times 0 is just 0, so that disappears. So all I have is 4s equals 200. Divide by 4, divide by 4, you get s equals 50. So my y-intercept is 0, comma 50. Over 0, up to 50. So it's that point right there. Connect them, and our graph looks like that. I would also title my graph. All right, maybe this is pumpkins. Taking a look at question number 5. Write the equation in slope y-intercept form. Now, slope y-intercept form is where you have y equals mx plus b. So we want to try and get the y equals all by itself. So I'm going to do minus 6x and minus 6x. So I have negative 3y equals negative 6x plus 36. All I'm going to do is take and rearrange those two. Divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. Make sure you divide each and every term by that negative 3. So now I have y equals negative 6 divided by negative 3 is a positive 2x. 36 divided by negative 3 is a negative 12 or minus 12. For this next one, I want to try and get the 2y all by itself. So I want to do plus 5x and plus 5x. So I have 2y equals 5x minus 10. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. So I have y equals, we could just leave it as a fraction. If you wanted to change it to be 2.5, that's fine, but you don't need to. Slope is always written as a fraction. So we get 5/2 x minus 5. In the next one, we want to identify the slope and the y-intercept from the following equations. So again, we need to rearrange for y equals. When you rearrange for y equals, you get y equals mx plus b. M is your slope. The plus b is your y-intercept. Now remember, with your y-intercept, it's always 0, comma, inside parentheses. So to get this 3y all by itself, the first thing that I would do is get rid of that 12 by doing minus 12 and minus 12. So I have 3y minus x equals negative 30, plus x and plus x to get that 3y all by itself. So I'm going to switch around the order here, keeping the sign in front of the negative 30, so that becomes a minus 30. And now divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Be very, very careful right here. There's really a 1 in front of that x. So this really becomes 1/3 x minus 10. Therefore, our slope is 1/3. Our y-intercept is 0, comma, negative 10. When we take a look at this next one, we want to try and get the negative 2y all by itself. So minus 6x minus 6x. So negative 2y equals negative 6x minus 20. Divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a positive 3x. Negative 20 divided by negative 2 is a positive 10. So I have 3x, so I can just have 3. Or you can put 3 over 1. Either way is fine. And your y-intercept is 0, comma, whatever your plus or minus is. So it's 0, comma, 10. For question number 7, given the formula, convert in the following. So in this first one, we have 50 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to take that 50. We're given the F, so we want to sub it into the formula where the F is. So you have C equals 5/9 times 50 minus 32. We're going to sub in that F where it belongs in the formula. So you could just type this right into the calculator. All right, type it right into the calculator, and you get C equals 10. For this one, we're given the C, 1 degree Celsius. This time we want to sub it in for the C into there. So instead of C equals, we have 1 equals 5/9 times F minus 32. Again, to get rid of that fraction, we want to multiply by the reciprocal. So times 9/5 times 9/5. Goodbye, goodbye, those cancel out. 9/5 times 1. Now 9/5 is really 1.8. So 1.8 times 1 is just 1.8. When you bring this down, you can get rid of the parentheses. So f minus 32. To get the f all by itself, it's just a one-step equation, plus 32 plus 32. So we end up with 33.8 equals f. In question number 8, the table shows Dave's bowling averages at different grade levels. What is the correlation coefficient of the data? So you're going to type this into your L1, this into your L2. You could just type it in exactly how it is. Make sure your data is correct. So go to Stat, Edit, type in your data, go to Calc, and then go down to number 4, Linear Regression, and hit Calculate. When you do that, you get a correlation coefficient of 0.906. That is considered a strong correlation because it's in between 0.7 and 1.0. Predict his average for the 12th grade. All right. Well, show your work algebraically. In our linear regression, our linear regression formula, when you did the calculate for your A and your B, notice that these are rounded to the nearest whole number. So that's what we want our equation to be like. You should get a linear regression equation of y equals 6x plus 42 when you do your linear regression equation. 6 was your A value and 42 was your B value. So now you want to take this 12 and sub it in for x. So 6 times 12 plus 42. When you do that, you should get a score of 114. In question number 9, rearrange the following formulas for the specific variable. Solving for A, we want to try and get the A all by itself. So we want to do minus 3b and minus 3b. So 2a equals c minus 3b. Just leave it how it is. You can't combine c's and b's. Divide by 2, you can divide that whole thing by 2. So a equals c minus 3b all over 2. And that would be our answer. In the middle one, we have g equals 5c squared minus 1. So we want to try and get the c all by itself. We want to get rid of that minus 1 by doing plus 1 and plus 1 first. So g plus 1 equals 5c squared. This is 5 times c squared. The opposite of times is divide. So divide and divide by 5. So we have g plus 1 over 5 equals c squared. Now the opposite of squaring a number is to take the square root of a number. So square root, square root. So our final answer is the square root of g plus 1 over 5 equals c. Solving for b in this last one, this is a times b times c. When 3 things are multiplied together like that, we can divide by everything except for the letter that we're solving for all at once. So we can divide by AC on both sides. So you just end up with V over AC equals V. That's one answer that you could have. You could do things individually as well. If you wanted to do things individually, when we had V equals ABC, we could divide by A first and divide by A first. So V divided by A equals BC. Now we have B times C. Divide by C, divide that whole thing by C. So we have V divided by A, which is all divided by C equals B. You could have also switched that around and divided by C first and then divided by A. So there's really 3 different answers here. This one is the preferred way though. Just divide by everything except for the letter that you're solving for when there's 3 things being multiplied together. Our last problem is doing the distributive property. All that you have to do with the distributive property is take the number outside and multiply by both of the things inside. -5 times x is -5x. -5 times 2 is -10. But when we write it, we write -10. 2 times 3x is 6x. 2 times -4 is -8. So we end up with g of x equals 6x minus 8. That is your review for your chapter 3 test.